Hey there, this is Ryan from the Sheepdogs, and you're listening to The Leak in Review.
Now forget everything that you thought you knew from the shed of dreams, the leak in review.
Welcome back to the program. Thanks again for the likes, love, shares, comments. Man, we are having a great run right now as the numbers continue to grow and the requests for artists to be on the program, both from the listeners and just from bands and promoters and publicists and such, continues to grow, which is a very, very good sign. So thank you very much. If you haven't already done so, hit like, hit subscribe, leave a comment. All this stuff helps the algorithms and it helps the little program continue to climb up the mountain. On today's show, I'm excited about this one. I think I can almost do a show with this band or this artist probably monthly, for the simple fact that we have so much history together, so many late nights, so many good times, so many wild experiences. And I'm not even we're not even going to get into everything because there's really too much to talk about on this program. But on this program, Ryan Gullen of the Sheepdogs, Juno Award-winning band, the Sheepdogs from Southern Saskatoon, he joins the program, talks about the growth of the band, where the rock and roll is maybe going, and the struggle that is in being a band. But it's paying off for this band right now. Bigger and better than they ever have been. And Keep Out of the Storm is the new album from the rock and rollers known as the Sheepdogs. We talk about the album. There's been some band changes. We talk about cheeseburgers. We talk about the Tragically Hip. This might be already a contender for one of my favorite shows of 2026. Enjoy this one. Ryan Gullen of the Sheepdogs on The Leak in Review.
Hi, my name is Kim Stockwood. I am a proud Newfoundlander and a Canadian singer-songwriter. In a landscape where many lack access to health benefits or employee assistance programs, the Unison Fund serves as a lifeline of hope for musicians and music industry professionals facing medical emergencies or mental health challenges. To learn more about Unison and their programs, please visit unisonfund.ca.
Hey there, this is Ryan from the Sheepdogs, and you're listening to The Leak in Review. I don't know why, for whatever reason, my phone always thinks my name is Megan.
Sitting with Megan Gullen
yeah, you're right.
the Sheepdogs. Ryan, good to see you again. Congrats, a new album from the Sheepdogs, Keep Out of the Storm. A play on just got to relax and watch all the nonsense go by, or?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I think sort of, we've talked about this a bit like amongst us, but it's a kind of around the idea that sometimes like music or even like rock and roll or music in general can be a bit of an escape or a bit of a suit of armor for the things going on in your life. And I think that, you know, whether it's some of the themes or just generally, it's like, that's the idea, is that I think music, there's a lot of shit that goes on in life that is really annoying and tough and difficult. There's a lot of things that you can control that, you know, big things are happening in the world, or whether it's or personal. And sometimes music, whether it's concerts or listening to a record or can be a moment in which you can kind of get away from it all. So that's a little bit of what it's all about, I think.
When was the album done for you guys? Was it completed, mastered, and kind of set to go for a January 2026 release before you went on tour with Bryan Adams, or?
We did some of the mixing and mastering during that tour, but we recorded it over a couple months. It was a bit of a unique situation because our founding drummer, Sam, left the band. And so this was the first record we did without him. And so we did it over the course of a couple months going into the studio, and we'd bring in kind of summer months, like late spring, early summer. We'd be doing shows around Ontario, and then we would come in and do the studio, bring in a drummer du jour. And
right, you had 3 different drummers? 3 or 4
different, yeah. So we'd bring in a drummer and we kind of like do it all with, do some songs with them and come back in a few days later. In one case, we did 4 days in a row with 3 different drummers. So it was cool. It was a cool way to do it. It was very different, but yeah, it was all wrapped by like the music part of it was all done. We just had to do the mixing and stuff this fall.
So how does that work when you're bringing in 4 different drummers? Are you sending them music that is kind of loosely floor recorded?
Not really, actually. I mean, the last little while, the way we've been doing records has been a bit of a mixture of a few different things, but the main thing is we all get into the room together and we sit in a bit of like a circle and we work on the song until it's sounding really good. And when we're feeling it's really great, like we'll try some different arrangement things. We'll go listen a little bit. Then we just hit record and literally the song is recorded in that moment. So in this case, it was like teaching the drummer the song, trying some different things, changing some things we were doing based on how we were interacting with the drummer, particularly the bass player, and kind of learning to all play together. And then when it was feeling really good, we would just hit record and that would be the song. So it was a unique situation because I think there's, like anything, like a relationship or anything, you probably fall into some habits, based on how those things are. But this really had us on our toes because it was like a new drummer, a different feel. And each drummer each day was a different feel. So we would basically be like, check this out. Here's this song we're working on. What would you do to this? Or we'd like you to play like this. And then we would figure it out from there.
Yeah, there's a lot of bands who would say it's their drummer and the bassist who are the conductors. They're running the flow. Like,
yeah.
I don't know what your relationship is, but when you're bringing in a new drummer to train them actually in the studio while you're recording, yeah, I can see that being a gigantic challenge.
Yeah, I've sort of like made the analogy. It's a little bit like dancing where it's like, the moves, but you still have to figure out how your feet don't run into each other or whatever. It's kind of like I don't like ballroom dancing or something like that. Not like I'm much of a ballroom dancer.
You fancy me as quite the
ballroom
dancer.
You might surprise. Yeah, no. But what was unique about it is it was that thing. I always kind of feel like the bass as an instrument is interesting for me. I obviously chose this as a profession. I love it, but it's kind of because it's like it connects the musical notes of the guitar with the rhythm of the drums. And it really is that glue that kind of, because like you are playing rhythm as well as notes versus just rhythm or just notes. And so it certainly can be really difficult to try to like bridge that gap. And if there isn't chemistry there, you do have to kind of adjust what you do. So there was a little bit of that. There was a few moments where feet were being bumped in the dance moves, but honestly, I think it made the record have a really interesting and unique sound because of the fact that it's not like nothing against Sam, obviously, like my favorite records that we've made in this band and favorite
Brothers for
songs.
Life.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But it was that unique thing, it's because each song had a different feel, each drummer had a different feel. And they're all very different drummers too. It wasn't like we just went to we didn't put the sign up at Long McQuaid with the tear off, like, looking for drummers and just get like 4 rock drummers. If you're into Led Zeppelin and the Beatles and whatever, we didn't do that.
Can you stay awake until 2 a.m.?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How many beers can you drink and still be able to play? But we like picked out like really good people that we liked and respected a lot. And that, that made it really fun because it was like, okay, here's this person that we are already friends with, that we know, that we really respect what they do. So,
and Sam, who's been with the band from its inception, just wanted to be a family guy, as I understand.
Yeah, I mean, being in a rock and roll band is difficult in itself. Being in a band a long time is difficult. Being on the road is hard. Having a family, being on the road, all that kind of fun stuff. So, for him, it just really came to a point where he kind of had to decide that he wanted. And it wasn't like he just sprung it on us out of nowhere. I mean, we announced he was leaving in, I guess, the fall of last year, but we had been talking about it for a year and a half. We like basically figured out like we got all the stuff figured out. We figured out what his last show would be and how we'd there was a lot of question marks on how we'd make that work. It wasn't like he's like, I'm done, see you later. Because a lot of people were like, I just saw about Sam. Oh my God. Like, are you okay? I'm like, well, it's very sad, but I also knew about it. Like,
but he also was, I think a lot of people made the conclusion or jumped to the conclusion that it was a health thing for him.
Well, yeah. And that's obviously something that we actually didn't really think about too much because, it's weird when you're navigating this stuff. I mean, it's weird when you have to like, kind of like when you're in a band, it's like, announcing a separation or a divorce on social media and then everyone just like weighs in on how they feel about it. It's a bit of a weird dynamic to have to like, cause I get it. People are tied to this band or whatever, but at the same time, like people change. In this case, honestly, yeah, he just wanted, there's no weirdness or hard feelings. He just wanted to spend more time with his family, and he wanted to be able to, be around home more. And the way that the business is now, especially what we do, we market our band, we make the most money, we, make the most moves, and everything is all through playing live. It's like really gone are the days where you can kind of just make a record and hang out. And it's, if you see huge artists that are doing these 2-year-long tours, because same thing, it's like, that's where they make all their money. That's where how they market the record, and, that kind of stuff too.
Crazy to think though, at the time that we had first met all them years ago, you guys in the band, the Sheepdogs, had already been a touring band for, 5 years, 6 years, been across the country a ton, maxed out credit cards, and just trying to get by, kept on going, right? And there's probably some times in that 5-6 years that you may have second guessed yourselves, but the hours that you guys put in is that ever paying off today? Because there are so many bands who can't tour. They don't have touring business. They don't have established fans in each of these markets. So really, you are getting paid so much now for your efforts. 20 years ago, it's really awesome to see, because there's a lot of bands who want to be in your spot right now.
Well, man,
they just don't want to work, I don't think.
Well, it's hard. It's hard because it's a massive gamble. When we were honestly, if I think about it now, the other big thing is that touring has never been more expensive. It's
crazy.
Back in the day, we weren't in a bus, and we weren't, all these other had crew members or anything. We were in a crappy van.
There was four guys,
maybe a fifth of the. Every once in a while, we'd have a friend who would quit their job because they wanted to go on a road trip and would help us out, but they would be more of a liability than they were a help. It wasn't like a crew member. It was they'd be hammered and someone else would have to drive or whatever. It wasn't it was they were taking care of us, but
and they weren't getting paid. So
no, they weren't getting paid. So whatever. I mean, I think there was one tour where a guy was with us and we didn't have a seat for him, so he was just literally sitting on a beer box between two seats. It was just, I mean, don't do that. Don't do that at home. Seatbelts are important.
One of the vans that I remember was nice though. You had the captain's chairs in the back.
Yeah.
Which was nice.
We had one for a while was a converted, it was a rural school bus. It was a Ford van that had school bus seats in it. And I had to cut numerous seats out of it. So we had room. I still have a scar on my wrist from using a blowtorch to I sliced my hand trying to rip these seats out of the van. But we would build this van that have a bed, and we try to we'd sleep in there sometimes. We did stuff. But I mean, back to what I was saying, touring now is so much more expensive. Gas is double the price, hotels, airfare, everything is so much more
crazy.
expensive.
How did hotels all of a sudden start charging
wild.
This crazy dollar? It's unreal when you know that a third of the hotel isn't occupied.
Yeah.
And yet they're still saying, it's got to be $300 a night to stay at the Medicine Hat Inn.
Yeah, I know.
It's get lost. You don't even have water slides anymore.
Yeah.
Shut up.
The water slide is shut down. I'm not even paying that massive water bill. There is a really great thing about how you get into Western Canada. The minute you sort of cross into Manitoba, all the hotels suddenly have water slides. there isn't a single water slide between Toronto and Kenora, but as soon as you get past Kenora, every single one has a water slide. But yeah, so it's a huge gamble because obviously you're investing money, you're losing money, you're going out there, and most days it feels like it's a total waste of time playing to nobody, that kind of stuff.
You need to do every one of those shows, and all of these shows have to work out perfectly.
Yeah.
Or else if one fails somewhere along the line, the tour, you might not get money for the whole tour.
Well, you never really know what the show is going to be that's going to create, whatever. It's the opportunity that you're looking for. I mean, I think that the one thing that modern bands have that we didn't have back then is there's a little bit more of a connection to people. It's easier to advertise to people or easier to connect, find people who like your band, let them know you're coming through town. Whereas we'd have to hope people put up posters, and we'd then use those posters to try to find the venue because we didn't have a GPS. It was we'd have ask someone on the street, how do you get to this place or whatever. But it's a huge gamble and there's incredible life experience. I was jokingly saying to somebody recently about how the amount of skills you develop with being on tour is sort of a pretty good boot camp for life. You got to learn logistical skills, interpersonal skills. You're dealing with money management and promoters and all these people, but also you're dealing with like you get basic van vehicle maintenance.
Right, you're
skills.
a mechanic.
You basically kind of get all these little weird skills, problem solving, interpersonal skills, all these things you learn.
Solder.
Oh, I mean, yes, of course. You got to learn all these things. I know how to take a seat out of a van. But then on the other side, you get the reps of being in a band. And so for us, in the end, when, 7 years of touring and then suddenly we get this really big opportunity, which to some part was very much owed to you, which we should talk about on this podcast, is, we were ready to kind of be put into the spotlight. Now, there's so many things I learned since then that I'm not like, there's moments I kind of cringe, but, we'd kind of spent 7 years fucking up. And so that when it came to time to actually like be put in the spotlight, we kind of like had worked out our interpersonal stuff. We knew how to go on tour. We knew how to play a show. We started working with managers or agents and all these things. Like we knew how shows were booked. We knew like how things were done. And so it really did give us all those skills that helped us to navigate, which I do credit for our ability to be still being here now and to be in the place that we are touring wise too.
You must be difficult for some other relationships that are outside of the music industry because you know so much about so many things that you must be so chill in situations compared to there's other people. Like I know people when they fly with me, they are so stressed out. Everything's a panic mode and all that. And I will show up and I will literally walk on the tarmac and just be like, I think this is the plane. I'm so chill. And it works out.
We did that at the Grey Cup. Remember we took that private plane?
And it was so cold. I
just talked about that on the Weather Network. Yes, it was so cold.
It was it had to have been
minus 38 with the wind chill, and none of our guitars or anything worked. Like none of our pedals worked. Then we got that private plane, and then we got held up because the Prime Minister was blocking the air. But anyways, yes. But I agree with you. And there's so many things with this. Flying is one that obviously like you get pretty dialed on. Anytime I like take my partner and we go on a trip somewhere, she's always just like, I love flying with you. It's like, everything goes smoothly and not whatever. Or like, I don't know. There's a lot of situations that come up on the road, even with like crew members and stuff where you're just like, I got the skills to do this. And I think it is a secret, sneaky skill.
No, I think the big thing is too, that you mentioned it, the personal relationships that you have first with the band and then the team that is working with the band, that takes a lot to manage because it doesn't matter if you're in a band or if you're all just welders on the pipeline.
Yeah.
Everyone has a different personality along the way and there's friction every once in a while. Like you're a team unit, much like a football team. This is the play we're running. We all have to execute for us to win. And if you got a few people that can't make the lobby call at 7 a.m. to get to the next gig, sooner or later you get cut.
Well, but
you get talked to first.
I recently saw a thing, actually I think it was like a Canadian band, but it was a thing where they were talking about how like, it's not some people don't want to admit this, but a band shouldn't be a democracy. And it's sort of this idea. It's like, you need to have people that are making decisions. You can't, which I don't know if I necessarily fully agree with, but I think there needs to be like strong personalities. And I think, yes, there has to be like a commitment to everyone sort of being like committed to this thing. Cause I think that sometimes if you take too long to make decisions or you get stuck trying to figure out certain things, like things will just pass you by and you have to kind of like jump on stuff and you have to be really clear in what you want and pretty clear who you are. And I think, there's a part of that where longevity is not necessarily tied to skill. It's tied to commitment. I think sometimes in this where it's I agree. There's a lot of, it's tied to commitment and it's also tied to like,
knowing your role,
but also like being a good person. Like you and me have seen a lot of people come and go over the years and it's I
can start listing them off.
Yeah.
I know some people that are in the industry. I'm like, one day that story's going to get told.
Yeah.
Like what an asshole you were that night.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the thing where it's like, I think people stick around because they're committed and they really have a clear vision of what they want. And they're, not just chasing something, but they're like any business. It's like if you're chasing like immediate success, it's not going to last forever. And I've always been a big believer in the like, you want to have your peaks, but you also don't want to like valley out. You want to like keep your trajectory going. So it's like, for me, it's been all about like, be good to those people around you, be good to those people that are good to you and continue to like push things forward. But don't know. It's like if I hung my hat on like a success we had 15 years ago and just kind of like, there you go, like I'd be a pretty, you know, I wouldn't be a very happy person. You know, it's like there's so many ups and downs, so many moments in which people are going to tell you like, well, you guys, you've had your moment, or, you know, there's trying to make room for someone new. And it's like, I get that. I'm not trying to like take all the opportunities, but I think like, yeah, having good relationships with people and being good to the people you work with, like, you know, like even just over COVID, I think so many people within bands realized there's those people that are part of what you do are so integral, and you got to be really good to those people. Like you also just can't be like one person and think you're going to do it. You need the support of all those people. So trying to be good to those people around you too.
Somebody mentioned you to me the other day, saying you had some sort of interaction and you sent them a text message, simple, saying thank you. And he commented back to me going, you know how many bands have said thank you out of all the things and that he has done with bands over his career? He goes, probably a handful. And yet worked with thousands of bands, thousands of events and all that. And to your point, like being nice, just respecting who your teams are, because your teams have tentacles that reach out well beyond the confines of that school bus van that the Sheepdogs had in 2006.
Well, and not to mention, like, you never really know what that's going to connect to later. Like, I think that it's like funny how many, you know, Carlin, who works at Indie 88, like interviewed us when he was going to journalism school. And we went during like learn and burn era. We were crazy busy and we made time for him. And he's like, oh, I really appreciate that. Or like,
and now he's the host of a morning show in Toronto.
Or Brooke Morgan, who we work with now at the Orchard as part of our label. You know, she's high up in the Orchard. Brooke did a thing with us when she was in college, and now she's like running all of our stuff and, you know, whatever. And mentioned like, oh yeah, I had a time when we all hung out and I did a thing with you when I was in college. And it's like, or like journalists where they go from they're just a student at a school and suddenly they're like the person doing the reviews for the Globe Mail or whatever. Like it's, you never really know that. And also you never know.
So short-sighted.
I know, but I had this big conversation with this recently where it's like, you never really know like how much a little bit of your time can have or something you say can have a huge impact on somebody. And so it's always good to I just feel like try to do those things as much as you can.
I just think that, you know, the Sheepdogs, you had some sort of motor and still have a motor that keeps you moving, because you know when you can say yes and you know when you can convince the rest of the band to say yes, because there's a couple things in there, right?
Yeah.
The fact that we did some early shows, I remember, I bet you I paid you enough money, I don't know, a few $100s for some of these shows. Like we did a rooftop show.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just kept on saying, come see this band, this band at, you know, this rooftop show in Toronto. And suddenly people were reaching out to me saying, hey, have you heard about this band? I'm the guy who's been yelling about this band. Yeah. And it just kept on happening where more people were talking about you to me than I was to others. And that's all because of just exactly what you're saying. You started connecting with so many people along the way and just making all those partnerships, like early partnerships with some people that you would have made maybe around that time, are some people that are probably were helping produce this new album, Keep Out of the Storm.
Yeah.
Like Tom Darcy, you've known that guy now for 15, 16 years. Well, Tom and I, you've probably known him for 20 years.
Well, I mean, it's like funny. So like that rooftop show you're talking about, which would have been in 2010, maybe.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, it would have been 2010. It would have been 2010 because it would have to be 2010. 2009, we did a thing in South by where we were not actually at South by, but we were there doing another festival that happened at the same time because we didn't get accepted to South by. And you had us in to your previous employer's activity. And like, I remember we had just kind of finished I Don't Know, the song, and we're doing like acoustic version. I remember like we started doing it, and then like Shauna from Six Shooter came down the stairs and was just like, who are these guys?
Right, I think Neville from Pure Music.
There's like
Pure Music, like this whole group was having some sort of meeting.
And they all kind of came down. I mean, that was a big one. So that rooftop show, not only was so we met Frank Adaccio, who became a longtime friend, and the next day
shot a video.
He came and he was like, can I make a video for you guys? The next day we went to his house and we shot the video for I Don't Know, which is still up there. Nathan Stein from Dine Alone was at that show, and that was the first time he saw us. But also, Monster Truck played on that show in a very early show, which then, you know, created a friendship with those guys, which they were like, you know, years later became much bigger. But at that time, that was like the first time we met those guys. And then also, you know, you connected us with Joel, who, you know, worked, you know, Dine Alone, Joel, who then connected us with everything, became our manager later, and connected us with the Rolling Stone thing. Like, all of that happened because of like a connection that you made, because we became buds, and then you just were like, had him over for a barbecue, and it all kind of.
Well, no, it wasn't just had him over for barbecue. You hit me up last second. This is the way I remember the story.
Okay, well, I want to hear your version of this. Good.
Here's the story about you.
Yeah.
According to me. You were in town, and I don't know what you were actually in town for. It was kind of like a last second thing, but it was during the summer, and I said, "Hey, you guys come by for a barbecue and whatever." And you're like, "Absolutely." Like, I know you're on the road, you're traveling, and you know, you guys are a good hang. Come by, we'll cook some burgers and everything will be good. And then you hit me up and you were like, "Hey, listen, we're totally coming. Can you ask your buddy Joel to come? We would really like to meet him." And I'm like, okay, I knew he was on the road and whatever. I convinced him to come. I said, "Come meet these guys, have one beer."
Yeah.
And then the story goes, well, he stayed all night. We drank all the beers, ate all the food, and he gave you the keys to the record label that night, just so you guys had a place to crash.
We went and crashed at his office. And then I left him a copy of Learn and Burn on his desk because thank you. But I know that, but this is the whole part of the story that doesn't make sense. It's like, it sounds like something I would do, but I knew who Joel was. In fact, I'd sent Joel, I went and looked at it later. I sent Joel an email trying to get him to come to a show that had been around there. But our show was the same night that he got married to Josie. So there's that. I have an email where he's like, "I got to bounce back, like I'm getting married or whatever." But I didn't, because I remember, because you and I both know Joel. Joel doesn't strike you as what you imagine a record executive looking like. I remember him like wearing like a orange hunting toque and like, you know, whatever. And I just thought it was maybe one of your buddies, because I didn't clock who he was at first. And we were just hanging out, which was cool, because then you're not like, you're just hanging out talking about music. You're not hanging out trying to impress somebody. But I figured it out over the course of who he was, over the course of the thing. But I don't think I would have asked you to invite him, because I didn't. I remember, because I remember laughing about it, because he just, you think about like that. You imagine in your head what it's gonna be like when you meet this like record executive person that's gonna like give you a big break. It's usually like, you know, slick looking guy in a suit, not like a guy in a hunting toque and like, you know, no, it's right there.
So, but the story goes from there.
Yeah.
You mentioned about getting into Rolling Stone and stuff like that. Joel and I had a conversation about, he came across that they were looking for the best unsigned band.
Mm-hmm.
They were, I don't know if it was worldwide or North America.
North America, I think.
And we just started having a conversation about who that could be out of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was artist that was on his label, managed by him. He just was throwing it all out at a whiteboard. We're bouncing around some ideas. And I was like, no, the Sheepdogs are still good. No, the Sheepdogs are still going to win. And I definitely remember saying, why not just put the one band in so that the two bands from Canada don't compete against one another?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's go down that path. And then he started putting marketing campaigns, and there was publicity that was in.
Yeah.
It just seemed like the whole country rarlied.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
For you to get on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine, it was a one record deal or a single deal?
No, it was arguably one of the worst record deals ever, but it was like forever and ever. I mean, we don't have to get into the ins and outs of record deals. It was negotiated to be better later, but no, it was like a 10 album deal.
Like you,
I remember
if
because
you release an album every 3 years.
Yeah,
good.
No, I remember
years.
because like by law, we had to get a lawyer. So they basically like gave us some money to be like, you can go hire a lawyer. You need to review this. We can't make you sign this. And in order to be part of the competition, we had to preemptively sign this record deal that they could execute at any point.
With Warner Music.
With Atlantic
Music.
And I remember the lawyer saying, this is an absolutely terrible record deal, but you're not getting anything better than this. So just sign it.
Wow.
Because it was not by, modern day standards, especially. It was pretty whatever. But I mean, that's fine. I mean,
things change fast though. The technology has changed
Yeah.
so incredibly since then. But here's something you probably don't know, that I was in Chicago leaving the airport and I see that you're on the cover of the magazine, right? I'm like, oh man, this is so sweet that this is happening or whatever. So I'm back in Toronto that week. I'm doing something with the Tragically Hip.
Yeah.
And I said to Gord Downie, I'm like, yeah, it's pretty cool that this happened. He's like, yeah. He's kind of like throwing it off or whatever. I'm like, what's the problem? Like, I mean, they're a great band and stuff. We got into this conversation and I just ended up saying, no, this is a band that has toured extensively across the country, has, maxed out all the credit cards, has done all the gigs, has stepped up everywhere that anyone has asked and so on. And, they're still an unsigned band and they made the cover and he just went, I like them now. Because it's a lot like the Hip. Even when those albums were taking off for the Hip in their early days, they were slogging it out, touring like crazy people.
But that's the funny thing about that situation. And obviously like very thankful for that opportunity, but it did create a scenario in which we did really have to prove ourselves. Because for most people, we were still a new band. Even though we've been doing that, we had to kind of like still prove it. And I sometimes feel
that happens all the time still today.
Yeah, but I feel like it was particular. I mean, there's still lots of people that would like say they don't like us because of that, and that's totally fine. I mean, whatever.
It's a weird angle.
But,
weird
I mean, it's funny. It's that thing where I get it, and I think a part of me, if it was somebody else, would feel that way too. But that's the unique part with any of these things. I remember, the band, the Sadies, right before the Rolling Stone thing happened, we were about to go do what at the time was the biggest opening tour we could have ever asked for, and was opening for the Sadies. For us, that was like the biggest thing we could get, and we were so stoked. First show was in Winnipeg, unbelievable, had the best time. Second show, Saskatoon. Right before the show, Dallas Good falls and breaks his femur in the back alley, and the whole tour gets canceled. They did the first show they'd ever done without Dallas that night, and we joined them on stage. We had a great time, but that tour got canceled. So we rescheduled the tour, and it was after the Rolling Stone thing happened, and we still did the tour and we still opened for them, but it was very clear like we had become a much larger band, but we were like, we want to still do this tour.
Like the publicity, the mentions from that across the country. Like, would you even know what the numbers were? Like the hundreds of millions of impressions?
Oh, I mean, you wouldn't. It's too early. It's too early on the internet. You didn't have access to that stuff. But I remember being like almost nervous to, the Sadies, these guys that we respected so much as musicians and as like road warriors and all this
guitars.
Yeah, unbelievable musicians, unbelievable dudes. And I remember like walking into the room and just being like, oh man, I hope these guys aren't like, you guys fucking sold out or whatever. And they were like so pumped for us, and they were like so excited that, we had done that. And because they knew like, this is like, we got presented this opportunity, we had to do it. And they knew that they knew our story to that point. But there's a part of that where you kind of have to like, I think every band has to sell themselves over and over again, but it's definitely a thing. And it's funny, still talking about this. It's like been 15 years now, and it's still a conversation. And it's like we still are just sort of like we are still we're a real band or whatever. But do you want to hear I have a really good Hip story. You want a good Hip story?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we didn't actually interact with those guys that much. We did a few things here and there, but the one time we did play with them was in London for Canada Day at Trafalgar Square. The Canadian government does a big show.
This is London, UK.
London, UK, Trafalgar Square. It was like us. I think it was us, Jan Arden, a small up and coming band called Arkells, and the Tragically Hip. We were like direct support to the Hip, I think is what it ended up being. And it was one of those weird things where you're kind of like, the show's kind of early and they're like, oh, there's going to be an after party. And there wasn't a lot of like food around. So we're all like super hungry. So we all go to this party afterwards on this rooftop. We're like overlooking London. It's cool, but there's no food. And everyone is so hungry. And we're all like drinking and stuff. I'm like, I should have food here. So I just at one point decided, fuck this. I'm going to go get us some food. So I went outside and I went down the street to McDonald's and I bought like, 100 cheeseburgers and 100 fries, and I just got this giant bag of McDonald's to take back. And I go back to the whole party thing, and they stop me and they're like, sir, you cannot bring McDonald's in here. And I'm like, listen, man, we've all been hanging out all day, playing a show, we're drinking beers. There's no food. You have no food upstairs. This is unacceptable. He's like, no, I hear you, but you can't go up there with bags of McDonald's. Can you please allow me to let our servers bring this up to the thing? And so we got out like literally silver trays and filled them with burgers and fries. And I returned to the party with like a team of servers, and they passed out burgers and fries. And the best part is like, we'd barely spoken to the Hip guys all day. We were kind of like nervous and like didn't want to overstep or anything like that. And I remember like they were like, this is the best thing ever. And then years later, we ran into them, and the thing they remembered to us is like, you guys are the band that brought the McDonald's to that party in the UK. That was awesome. And we ran into, like, we've run into them since then, and it's come up as well. So like, I love that of all the things that they could remember us, we were the band that I showed up with like a team of servers with like 100 cheeseburgers to help everybody out at like a party. It was awesome.
I love it. It's amazing.
So I'm glad if that's the memory that Gord Downie had for us or any of those guys, I'll take it.
Tour dates across the country, starting in Southern Ontario in just a couple weeks' time, making your way all the way out west, and then some fall Canadian dates. But there's some European run that's coming up, UK dates again. That's got to be fun going back to the UK for every album and, you know, growing a fan base.
I mean, it's like I always jokingly say we're in the business of finding where people love rock and roll. So, you know, places in Europe and the UK, you know, it's still a market that we're kind of like not super well known, but starting to grow a name. And so we're always, you know, happy to go over there, having places, you know, still going to places we haven't been before, people don't know about us, and kind of growing the name. So, you know, that's always really exciting. And, you know, there are a lot of Canadian dates, not a lot, but a handful of Canadians that aren't yet announced, but I will say there are more. There are some things that are not on a list that may be on a list in a little bit. So.
Well, and you guys just did do the Bryan Adams tour.
Yeah.
And by the way, there was a social post of you guys with your shirts off. And did it say Adams across your
chest? Bryan. Yeah, Bryan. It was Bryan. Because he did this thing every single night where he would like, cameramen would go out in the crowd and they'd take pictures and people would like dance and stuff. And there's one show on the tour where like it got pretty randy and people were like, women were taking their shirts off and stuff. Like it was like most nights it was like dudes taking off their shirts, but then it got a little crazy. And so
I thought it was like towards the end of the tour as well.
It was. But yeah, so like every night. And so like we started being like, we got one night, last night of tour, we got to do a thing. So I befriended all the cameramen. I'm like, okay, we're going to do this. I'm going to get this figured out. We're going to go up to the rafters. So we're not like in the audience, but then you cut to us and we'll write Bryan on our chest. So we did that. So he really liked it. It was pretty
good.
Funny. Yeah.
It looked good. I thought, that is a band that is a team. They're all operating in sync.
Yeah.
And then shortly after that, you did the Christmas special, the holiday special with him. How was that?
It was fun. I mean, weirdly, we did Christmas in September. So we started the tour and then we did that Christmas special, but then it came out after the tour. So it's pretty early on. I mean, we've sort of become buds with Bryan over the last year and a half or so. And so that's like a pretty fun situation where it's like so much of this stuff you have to fight so hard to make happen. But in that situation, like Bryan manages himself, like he is his own manager and we manage ourselves. And so
that must be just recent though.
Last couple of years, but he's very good at it. And, you know, it's impressive actually how it's very like, definitely like, wow, that's pretty amazing.
Coming from a manager who manages.
Well, this is the thing. And I also manage the band. So,
and you and Curry and other bands on top.
Then the hilarious part of it all is like all these things where you got to get agents involved and all these people. Like we were trying to get it happen, and like I'm friends with Vinny, his agent, and we're trying to figure it out, and you know whatever. And then one day I just hit him up and I was like, "Hey, what do we do? Do you want to do this tour or not?" And he's like, "Yeah." And we're like, "Okay, done." It was done. Like that was like literally, you know, what it took. It was like all these people involved, and finally we just like, you know, hey, let's just make this happen. And obviously, like, there's lots of people involved. I'm not selling it, but it was one of those funny situations. So we kind of knew each other, but that Christmas special was a whole different thing. We went to the warehouse. We had, you know, like other bands involved and stuff. And it was
all kinds of production.
Yeah, all kinds of production in warehouse studio playing. Like, you know, he was like, "We have too many basses on this, Ryan. You should play acoustic guitar." I'm like, "You don't want me to play acoustic guitar. I'm not that good of a guitar player." He's like, "Yeah, you're fine. Go grab that guitar. Just play that guitar." I'm playing the guitar and
Linda McCartney, don't worry, we'll pot this down.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's probably not in the mix because he's like, "Go talk to Keith Scott. He'll show you the chords." And I was like, "I don't even know how some of these chords." And he's like, "I just play it like this." Like I'm literally getting a guitar lesson. And then as we're finishing, Billy Ray, who was one of the techs on, I think it was Billy Ray, one of the techs comes over to me. He's like, do you know the story behind that guitar? I was like, no. It's like, oh, that's 1963 Everly Brothers Gibson, you know, $100,000 super rare guitar. And then Ewan's playing the Guild with the Bigsby on it, which is like his like unplugged album guitar that Guild gave him. And you're just like having these moments where you're realizing like these like cool, crazy gear artifacts that this studio has are all just like, here you go, just play this guitar or whatever.
And it's a beautiful studio.
It's a beautiful studio. It was real fun hanging out with like Alan Doyle and Bare Naked Ladies guys and stuff. It was it was a fun time. It was fun doing Christmas. It was actually weirdly my birthday, so I had Christmas on my birthday with all those guys. So,
in Gastown, Vancouver.
A place where there's not a speck of snow
ever. Yeah. Keep Out of the Storm, the new album from the Sheepdogs. The tour dates are coming. The Sheepdogs, find all their info online. But I wanted to say the album, to me, as I listen to it, there's 3 parts. It starts off to me like you're in like a 1978 Dodge Dart and you're just cruising along. There's lots of dust.
Yeah.
Then it ends up to like a beach kind of campfire. We're hanging out vibe through halfway through. Like, and then around, I think it's the Owl, which is towards the latter.
Yeah.
The latter third of the album, where it's like now we're back in the desert, but we're only doing peyote.
I was gonna say, that's when the drugs start getting passed around. It's like you're at the beach, and then the drugs start coming out.
Yeah, and what is it? All I Want to Do and stuff like really a real vibey kind of thing that's in the middle, and then back to the rock and roll of the Sheepdogs to wrap up the album. Great job.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Ryan, thanks for doing this. I have so many fun stories with you guys over the years. So many stories that can't be told today, but for another time. But we should maybe talk about the time where we were at the Grey Cup and there was a dildo and it was a suction cup one. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Well,
yes.
Well, so the whole thing with the Grey Cup was it was in Regina, and we weren't getting paid. Because they don't really pay you. I mean, at least that's what I was told. But they basically have like a production budget to cover things, but they're not like giving you cash. And so they just wanted to make sure everything's taken care of for you. And so I remember me and Lisa, who we worked with at the time, were like, let's see how much we can get the Grey Cup to pay for. And so we convinced them to get us a private plane to go, because we had an event in Saskatoon in Regina. And so we flew there, flew back, and so we had this private plane take us after, which we were on as well. Back, we did our sound check in Regina, and then we flew back to Saskatoon to go and do a show, because logistically it was very difficult. And our sound guy Downie left his bag on the plane, and I had to go and get his bag and bring it back to him. So in Saskatoon, I lived right next to an adult store, and so I put a giant dildo in his bag so that when he went to go get something out fell this giant dildo, which we know, it's classic tour prank or whatever. But then it was just like around for the rest of the weekend, because it was just like floating around, and it constantly was like stuck.
And it was at eye level when I walked into the backstage into your dressing room. It was at eye level. Like I walked through the door, and all of a sudden there's this giant dildo.
Well, and so Downie kept it because he thought it was so funny. It was like a funny keepsake from tour. And so years later, he's in Toronto, and I was living here, and he's like needed help moving. And so I was helping him like pack up his place, and I found it, and he's like, please, for the love of God, Ryan, do me a favor. If I die in my sleep, I need you to break into my apartment and take that out of here, because the last thing I need is my like Christian parents to find this giant dildo in my bedroom if I die in the middle of the night. So I was like, I got you, Downie. I'll take care.
We'll wrap up this program with that. Right. You're like the wolf from Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Come in and do the ultimate cleanup.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, it would have been a. So yeah, there's Downie Lau lives in the Yukon, so it might be a bit of a trek to go make that happen. Who knows if this storied dildo made its way up there? But
Sheepdogs on the road. Go see them. Go download the album. Go pick up the album when you're at the show. Keep Out of the Storm. Thanks for doing this, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Now forget everything that you thought you knew from the share